Have to understand, true art comes from a wound you can't see. The way Wyatt said it, leaning against the stark white gallery wall, made it sound like a profound truth he'd mined from the depths of his own soul. The light from the track lighting caught the edge of his glass of Prosecco, making it glitter. Behind him, my work, his show, hummed with a vibrant, silent energy. Everyone was captivated. That's a beautiful thought, Wyatt, I said, my voice perfectly even. We met at a disastrously loud TechHeart mixer 5 years earlier. I was hiding behind a pillar trying to make a glitch art app on my phone work, and he'd walked right up, not to hit on me, but to ask about the code. He had this infectious energy, a way of making you feel like you were the only two people building the future. Our first collaboration was a small projection mapping project for a local music festival. I remember us at 3 a.m. in my cramped apartment, surrounded by empty pizza boxes, watching our visuals dance across the brick wall opposite my window. It felt like magic. That was the good memory. The first red flag came a week later, when the festival's blog post credited the work to Wyatt Vance, an associate. He said it was just a typo, that he'd tried to get them to fix it. I was so desperate for a creative partner, I believed him. The next 3 years were our golden period. We got a shared studio in an old warehouse, the kind with massive, dusty windows and the constant smell of turpentine from the painter next door. We were a perfect machine. I was the engine, the one who spent hundreds of hours mastering ZBrush, coding custom rendering plugins in Python, and pulling all-nighters to meet deadlines. Wyatt was the chassis and the chrome. He networked, he built our brand on Instagram, he could talk a potential client into anything. We landed a campaign with Onitsuka Tiger, then a series of digital installations for the lobby of a boutique hotel. I thought we were a team. But slowly the balance shifted. It was me giving my weekends, my sleep, my technical skills. It was him taking the meetings, the credit, the bigger cut for business development. I rationalized it. He's the face, I'm the hands. It works. The small betrayals escalated. A magazine profile that barely mentioned my name. Interview where he talked about the lonely, grueling hours he spent developing the code for our Chroma Bloom series. Code I wrote over a single, feverish 72-hour period in October while he was in Chalam. He always had an excuse. They misquoted me. The editor cut it for space. You know how it is, Zara. The discovery was an accident. I was searching our shared NAS drive for an old invoice and a file I didn't recognize popped up. Tesseract Pitch Solo V4, PDF. Tesseract was a massive VR company, our dream client. I opened it. It was our entire joint portfolio, our 5-year plan, our most ambitious project, a deeply personal one based on my grandmother's memory loss, all rebranded as the singular vision of Wyatt Vance. My blood went cold. For the next 3 weeks, I became a digital ghost. I used forensic software to recover deleted file histories. I cross-referenced his calendar with server access logs. Each new fact was a new circle of hell. He hadn't just stolen our work. He had systematically erased me from our own history, one file save as at a time. The breaking point came in a sterile, glass-walled conference room on the 47th floor. I was there as his technical lead. Present were 2 VPs from Tesseract, Ms. Patel and Mr. Rodriguez, their faces professionally impassive. Wyatt, looking sharp in a tailored Zegna suit, delivered his masterpiece of a speech. "This project is my soul," he said, his voice thick with rehearsed emotion. "It's a culmination of my personal journey through loss, a digital manifestation of grief that I've spent the last 3 years building from the ground up, pixel by pixel." I was performing my life, my grandmother's story, as his own. I felt the air leave my lungs, everything froze. And in that moment, as he spun his narrative of solitary genius, my plan began to form. He made a mistake, a tiny one. He referred to the custom particle rendering engine I'd built as Refract. A plausible, techie-sounding name. But I had named it Reflector, after a song. He'd seen the name 100 times, but he never understood what it meant. He never cared to ask. My first call was to an intellectual property attorney named Veronica Vega. She was sharp, pragmatic, and her office was filled with towering stacks of case files, not fancy art. Her retainer was $15,000, nearly all of my savings. For 6 weeks we worked in secret. Ms. Vega called it building an unassailable narrative. My part was to act normal, to keep collaborating with Wyatt on smaller projects, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. One evening he almost caught me. Came back to the studio unexpectedly while I was documenting his login history on our server. I managed to switch screens to a render farm queue just as his shadow fell over my desk. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained calm. The evidence we compiled was meticulous. 1 time-stamped Adobe Cloud logs showing I was the sole creator and editor of the 34 core project files. 2. Server logs from the NAS drive showing his account had only ever downloaded final JPGs and MP4s, never source files. 3. A chain of 112 text messages where I explained the core concepts of the project to him. 4. An email from him to our gallerist, Ziegler, claiming a piece I finished on May 10th was something he had just pulled out of the fire. 5. A sworn affidavit from a junior programmer, Simon, who had helped me debug the Reflector engine. The ironic coincidence came from a forgotten folder on a backup drive. A 2-hour screen recording of me building the project's centerpiece, a tutorial I'd made for a student workshop. My voice, my cursor, my entire process, preserved in 4K as a final piece of strategy. Ms. Vega had me set a decoy. I had a mutual friend casually mention to Wyatt that I was feeling uncredited and might seek legal advice about one minor, early piece. He laughed it off. He was walking into the trap, completely blind. The trap was sprung at the National Digital Arts Awards. It was a grand affair in a historic building with gilded ceilings and an open bar. Wyatt was on stage, basking in the applause, accepting the Digital Innovator of the Year award for the very project he'd pitched to Tesseract. As the applause died down, I gave a subtle nod to the event coordinator, a woman Ms. Vega had been in contact with for 2 weeks. I approached her and said, "It's time to play the tribute video now." Wyatt, still on stage, preened for the cameras, expecting a glossy montage of our work. The massive screen behind him flickered to life. First wave of the reveal was subtle. It showed the polished final images of the project. He smiled, soaking it in. Then the video cut. It wasn't a slick animation anymore. It was my raw screen recording. My voice filled the silent auditorium, explaining a complex layering technique. My cursor darted across the screen, my name visible in the Adobe Creative Cloud login in the top right corner. The file's creation date, October 17, 2 years prior, was watermarked at the bottom. Collective gasp went through the room. I watched Wyatt's face. The bravado melted into confusion, then curdled into pure ice-cold panic. The camera operator, instructed by the coordinator, zoomed in on his ashen face, projecting it onto the side screens for everyone to see. The coordinator leaned over to me and whispered, "Is that enough?" "Yes," I replied, my voice quiet but clear. That was everything. The next 24 hours were a digital firestorm. TechHeart blogs, Twitter, Instagram, it was everywhere. My phone buzzed with calls from our gallerist, from former clients, from friends demanding to know what was happening. I ignored them all. The awards foundation formally rescinded Wyatt's award by 9 a.m. the next morning. Ms. Vega's legal filings landed an hour later. We settled out of court. The judgment was for $87,500 in damages, my calculated share of the profits he'd hidden, and a legally binding public retraction he had to post on all his social media. His career was vaporized. The gallery dropped him. Tesseract sent a scathing letter. The last I saw of him was a photo a friend sent me weeks later. He was stocking organic kale at a Whole Foods, the green apron hanging loosely on his frame, his face pale and unrecognizable without the spotlight. My new studio is smaller, but it's all mine. The afternoon sun streams through a clean, single window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I received a creative residency grant last month, and Tesseract called me directly to offer a solo development deal. I learned that trust is a resource, and I had allowed mine to be strip-mined. He stole my work, but he couldn't steal the part of me that makes it. He couldn't steal the talent. He once said that true art comes from a wound you can't see. He was right. He just never saw the one he was about to receive.